It is LaLaPaRuZa week on Slaysian Royale, and I have a lot of comments. We're gonna talk about some poor strategy, drama, misdirects, choices, and so much more. So buckle in, let's talk. Last week's episode seemed kind of polarizing. Usually I find that the audience is pretty homogenous with each other in regards to opinions on who should have gone home and why they should have gone home, opinions on whatever person got the villain edit that week, and what have you. And the reception of Venus's attitude towards Siam, as well as Siam's outburst, were kind of a mixed bag of opinions. I want to specifically address the virtue signaling and moral high ground attitude that I'm seeing a lot of, and this projecting of people calling Venus a bad person. I think it is one thing to talk about somebody's attitude on a show and say, this was something I didn't like. They were overly negative. The religious harm this caused is gross to watch. I don't like what I saw. I think that's one thing. But to entirely say Venus is a bad person because it's all or nothing behavior that I don't like, reducing somebody's entire personality to you are now this because there was one aspect of your personality I didn't like. It's unhealthy behavior. I think her actions were absolutely insensitive, but none of us are a monolith. We all make mistakes. And claiming that Venus is a bad person because of one instance on a filmed and edited television show is a bit ridiculous in my opinion. That being said, I believe that her and Siam have made up. They understand where each other are coming from, and they seem to be polite on social media now, which is definitely progress from what we saw last week. It's revealed that the entire top 3 all chose Siam's name to go home, which makes sense to me. She was the objective worst through the entire competition up until now. And when they start to discuss what happened, they're interrupted by the golden ballout, a story object used to save someone from the bottom 3. That is from Philippines season 3, a season I have not currently perceived, and I won't for a very long time based on how I am watching the seasons of Drag Race. There are people every single week that are like, oh my god, you have to watch this, you have to watch that. I'm watching things in a very specific order. I do not have the personal time to incorporate yet another TV show into my day-to-day, so I will watch it when I do. In my humblest opinion, this object, from what I know about it, as well as the golden beaver from Canada's Drag Race, are some of the best devices on the show. And I kind of wish that Mainline would do something similar to this. Maybe in a regular season or in an All-Stars. I think it's a fun idea. The season would have to be judged completely different and the producers would have to play a different game, which is why I think US Drag Race would quite literally never do that, because it takes the power out of their hands and puts it in someone who may not have the same interests as them. Drag Race is a multifaceted game. It's a game of strategy, it's a game of stamina, it's a game of television production, but it's also a game of social interactions. If you play the social game well, you can make it really far in an All-Stars or All-Stars adjacent season, because your fellow competitors are making moves that could help or harm you. And so you want to stay in the good graces of the power players so that they want to retain you. And this week was no exception to that general rule of the social game. Some girls play elements of this game very well, but then absolutely fail at other portions of it. Suki. Some girls in previous seasons played the social game really well, but played the physical game terribly. There are very few contestants who are able to do both. I'm gonna say initially that Suki may be jotting down the PPE in her hotel room every single night, but she is not thinking big picture, and this episode proved that she is not as plugged in as she could be. And that's disappointing because I am rooting for her as she is now the only international queen to be left. This week's mini challenge is a reading challenge with a twist. They're getting into fortune teller light costuming and then reading their competitor's future from where they are now. I like this idea, but I also don't know if reading needs to be twisted at all. I also didn't think anything was bombastically hilarious. I liked Yuhua saying, oh, I forgot about Kiana. But the judges have too. That was funny. I did think that doing a spiritualist fortune teller mini challenge the week after Venus Deluxe went off on thinking that Siam was a dark, evil witch was iconically hilarious. Not to imply that fortune telling is dark magic. but it is in direct conflict with the stories of the Bible, which specifically warn against fortune telling. And Miss Venus of Nazareth would absolutely know that. The standout to me of this mini challenge was actually the pit crew member in the background with his completely visible trimmed bush. Normally the pit crew are so shaved down, but I appreciated that this man allowed himself to have a sensible 1 millimeter of hair below his navel. Suki wins the mini challenge, and like all the others before, she gets an advantage for herself and a punishment for one of her fellow competitors in the maxi challenge. Before we get into that maxi challenge, which is the LaLaPaRuZa, I want to give a special shout out to Mama Pao this week because she looked incredible on the runway. The structure of this garment was to die for. It was so luxurious with the immaculate beading, the mix of prints. It was so scrumptious, and I loved that turban. She was quite literally a divine entity, and I was here for it. Not that Pao has not looked good this season, but this was the first costume that she wore that I legitimately gasped over. So again, this week is a lip sync LaLaPaRuZa, and the playlist was a bit random. Goddess by Sasha Colby, which I gotta give it to them for putting a song that's already been performed on Drag Race by a winner in the finale. I'm hoping that means somewhere we'll get legs in the pantheon of the Drag Race universe. Queen by Sylvie, Queendom by RuPaul, and Boom 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 by the Venga Boys. Wild. These were perfectly adequate lip sync songs, just totally random in a lip sync playlist together. It was like the remnants of the playlist that maybe the girls did not think they were actually going to get. And this is where Suki loses the plot and did not strategize well at all. Or maybe it was perfectly in her strategy. Maybe she wanted to ensure that an international girl was going to the next round, but I think it was horrible strategy, just like I think it was a mistake when Lemon and Fierce went against each other in the reading roast, because it separated them and lessened their odds of both going to the next round. And this time the stakes are so much higher because there are 4 queens that are still here representing the Philippines and only 2 girls not representing it. We need to address the elephant in the room. The balls that the pit crew pulled from were not moving, and they were huge color-coded balls. Mama, I have been active in complaining about these LaLaPaRuZa balls. I am so exhausted by watching Bruno spin a hopper where the interior is not moving, reach in and grab a ball that we never see all the names of. Bruno then walks over to the judges panel and sits with them while the hopper disappears. Production can do whatever they want with those balls, and then they return them only for Bruno to go back and do the same thing where those balls don't move. We never see all the names, so we have no idea of knowing if all those balls actually have different names on them. So I appreciate that Slaysian Royale recognized that this ball thing is a complete setup, didn't try to hide that it is production meddling. And I remember in season 1 of Drag Race Philippines during Miss Shutaka, all those balls were also color-coded. I remember Khalid Karen reaching in and grabbing a ball to announce whoever was safe next, and she grabbed like an orange ball or something. And in the next scene, she's holding a blue ball. Very clearly, the orange ball was meant to go farther in, and so she grabbed the wrong ball and had to reach in and grab a different one. So I would not be surprised if the same thing happened here. If the pit crew was maybe instructed, grab this color. I would much prefer them just go back to the wheel thing they used to do. They're playing in our faces, but it's less egregious than these balls, which are very clearly the exact same setup. So back to Suki. She either was playing this game terribly, did not understand the rules, or had a very clear intention of how she wanted this all to shake out, by either sabotaging herself or Yuhua. We're in top 6. Alliances have formed and are clear. There are the Filipinas, and there are the international queens. They are the only ones rooting for each other, with 1 or 2 sometimes descending, that being Kiana and sometimes Arizona, but it really depends on the day of the week, where the stars have aligned and all of that, right? So if you take 1 international queen and put them in the bottom, the Filipinas are not going to send home one of their friends. They're gonna send home the outlier. And this is kind of unique because this doesn't always happen. In Canada versus the World, the Canadians were very quick to eliminate each other when they perceived that they were worst in the room. And no, the Filipinas generally haven't been the worst in the room in comparison to the person in the bottom, but these girlies are locked the hell in. They are all working their way to the finale and they're not letting anybody get in their way. And that's how you're supposed to play a game like this. You have to lock in. And so in any eventuality where Yuhua or Suki are in the bottom, they are out. And we can talk about track record all day long. Alliances play a huge factor in these games. By pairing herself with Yuhua, it essentially guaranteed that one of them was going to go home. It sealed in their fate. And there's no way you can be naive enough to believe, oh, well, maybe one of us will survive from the bottom and maybe one of us will get saved if the situation calls for it. No, I would have never paired myself with Yuhua if I were Suki. She should have spread out the odds and tried to stack the deck in their favor so they came out with at least slightly better percentages of making it to the next round. Suki gets the unique position to pick not only her partner but also the song. That is a massive advantage in a challenge like this. Her best odds would have maybe been to choose Arizona. Not that I think Arizona is bad, but I think she suffers from the same problem that Venus does. Her style of lip syncing is very specific. Venus's style is very specific. When they're out of their element, they struggle a bit. And we saw that this week. But when they are in their element and when they can lean in on their strengths, they do exceptionally well. So I would have chosen one of them. And then I would have picked a song that seemed farthest away from who they were. And just hoped that maybe I could eke through. And then that disadvantage, which goes to one queen to make sure that they cannot choose their song or their partner if they're picked, she chooses to put on Kiana. I'm a strategist when it comes to games. If someone does really well in a video game, you don't want to hurt them. You want to hurt the weakest link in the room. So in Mario Party, if you have a competitor who has 6 stars, you don't send Boo to go steal from the top player. You steal from the weakest player. They're the weakest for a reason. They haven't gotten stars for a reason. The top player is going to keep racking up points because they know how to play that game. Same with a situation like this. Kiana is an exceptional lip syncer. Giving her the disadvantage of not being able to choose her song or her partner doesn't really harm her because she'll probably be fine. You want to hurt someone who is going to struggle if they are in a situation to choose something. That being either Arizona or Venus because their style of lip syncing is so specific. Brigading and Kiana have both proven that they can do silly, they can do camp, they can do fierce, they can do glam. Venus does best when she can be campy. Arizona does best when she can rely on humor. Not to say they can't do the other things, because I can already hear y'all typing up in the comments, but there are objective strengths that every drag queen has. So you pick the person who maybe doesn't have all of the tricks in their tool belt. Or if you want to sabotage Yuhua, then you give her the disadvantage. But I don't think that was her gameplay. So then choose Arizona perhaps to go against and then give the disadvantage to Venus. This ensures that the 2 lip syncers in the room who are the most specific will have the least amount of odds against you and maybe Yuhua if they end up with her. Suki then boldly chooses the song Goddess. This is a campy song. It is full of energetic moments, danceable moments, neck breaks, lots of lyrics. And Yuhua and Suki both gave quite literally nothing. It was so bold of Suki to choose a song that she knew not any of the words to. To use a reference that I'm gonna recycle in about 8 minutes. It was like Amy Yoncé's Chanel boldly demanding to lip sync when she knew not one single word have come through. I also didn't quite understand why Yuhua was playing all her choreography in the direction of Suki. It was throwing in the towel to me, like, look, she's a goddess. She is. That's the goddess. Bow down to her because she's the goddess. The song is about how you're the goddess. So you're supposed to make the judges look at you. But by pointing at Suki, it was like, give it to her. Give her the win. She's the one. That's the story that plays out on the stage. And maybe she's right that in comparison, Suki is the goddess to Yuhua. But Yuhua essentially guarantees herself in the bottom from that strategy. Brigading is next to choose and her partner she picks as Venus. Venus then chooses the song Queendom by RuPaul. Brigading was so present in this lip sync. She had the right attitude and her styling was super supportive of this lip sync. If you're gonna whip your hair back and forth, your hair needs to be locked in. It cannot be falling in front of your face, it can't be flowing anywhere, it's gotta stay where it's at. And choosing that cute blonde side scooped curly hair was perfect for what Brigading was doing, whereas Venus's hair was so long it kept moving in front of her mouth. And Miss Mama had no Matchy syndrome. Those legs were golden. I think Venus almost had the win of this lip sync when she brought out that blower and started cleaning up the stage like an exhausted PA. But then you see Brigading notice that Venus is pulling out camp and getting the audience's attention a little better, so she goes in and steals some of the spotlight, hams it up, takes the blower as well and plays with it. Their bond is so special and unique among this cast, and I really enjoyed seeing their camaraderie play out on the stage during this last bit of the lip sync. Brigading is called as the winner, and Venus is then put in the bottom 3. Because, as I mentioned, she does best when she is able to do camp, which she almost won it. Brigading course corrected really well, which is a specialty of hers, that she's able to do what needs to be done, and she is called as the winner for a reason. And then Arizona and Kiana, the long rivals from all the way back to episode 1, then go head to head. But Kiana cannot choose her song, so it's up to Arizona, who then asks Kiana what she wants, and Kiana starts to share what she wants for lunch, which was hilarious. Arizona chooses Boom 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 Boom. So here's my tea. Kiana won that lip sync in the first few seconds. As soon as she revved up, it was over for Arizona. Over. She had so much control over her body and her facial expressions. But then, Arizona splits her hair in half. And where Kiana went full throttle right from the beginning, Arizona went low and slow until she revved up, and then it was full speed ahead. And baby, the show was on from that point. The moment she started vaping with her nose, I noticed Kiana start to crack a bit. Suddenly, her cool, composed face started to turn to worry, and her once controlled movements became manic. Watching someone who is incredible at what they do get so deeply in their head and flounder to get out of it is so tough to watch. When Kiana got on the ground and started doing the Alyssa and Tati but on her knees, with her face looking nutso, it was over for her. I felt bad for her because she had it. And then she got in her head, probably thinking, oh, that's funny. I don't know how I'm gonna do something like that. How am I gonna keep up with her? Oh God, I'm losing this now. And then her just freak out and stay out of the song for the remainder of it. It was hard to watch. And I gotta say, Kiana's was my favorite outfit on the entire runway that night. I loved that black leather on top of the netting. I thought she looked so hot. Her makeup was muggy, that hair was right. Kiana could have won this lip sync had she just stayed in the moment and ignored what Arizona was doing. I believe that with my whole soul. I think the vaping thing was funny enough, but Kiana could have just won it on merit rather than trying to pull out a gimmick. You kind of see something similar happen in the Girls Just Want to Have Fun lip sync when Silky starts mixing a drink and Jiggly looks at her, kind of makes a face, and all of her joy to be in that lip sync sort of saps out, and Jiggly's just no longer in that lip sync. All respect and love to Jiggly Caliente, by the way. But we see this happen where the queens are so locked into the lip sync, they get distracted for a moment and then they're done. Arizona is rightfully called as the winner, and then Kiana gets to go backstage with the other bottoms. And then the twist happens where the top 3 have to lip sync for the win and to essentially save someone from having to lip sync one last time. I love the lip sync smackdowns where the best girls go to the end. I think it makes for a more dynamic situation rather than just watching people who are so tired and are just ready to go sit down and stop having to do this get to perform, because they're the best for a reason. Creates for a really damn good show because they are fighting to save their friend or to potentially put someone in the bottom who they want to go home. I think it makes a more significant impact on the competition overall, so I really like these. They lip synced Queen by Sylvie, and I've gotta say, Suki needs to listen to her iPod a few more times, I fear. Suki has such great control over her body and her facial expressions, but then her mouth is going on a separate journey. It's like watching a divorced couple trade kids at the park. One pulls up into the parking lot and opens their door, the other one drives into the parking lot and opens their door. They come out and meet for a moment, the kids swap, and then they drive off in different directions. Suki's body was doing something that the lips weren't doing, but then they'd meet for a moment, and the lips especially were not syncing to the song, but the body kind of was. But she should have maybe listened to that iPod a couple more times to get ready for each one of the challenges, especially a lip sync smackdown, because this is now becoming a habit where she doesn't know the lip sync songs. Brigading had wind behind her and was clearly craving that win. I'll be honest, I wasn't really paying much attention to Arizona. I was just really watching what Brigading was doing because she had me locked in. Brigading is called as the winner and receives the golden ballout, which she can then use to choose the bottom two who are going to lip sync. When it all starts becoming a little more clear on what exactly is happening, Yuhua looks completely deflated. The look on her face was absolutely giving, oh, it's me, I'm going home. If she was against Venus or Kiana, it was curtains for her. Unless the song was completely in Yuhua's wheelhouse. And the likeliness of that happening was very low since they probably already knew what the song was going to be. Additionally, even if the girls really like her, as they were implying they do in liking her energy and her positivity, they were never going to choose to put two Filipinas in the bottom when they could just snipe out yet another international queen. They can say all day long that it's not Philippines versus the world, but that is very clearly what's happening. There's nothing wrong with that gameplay strategy, but they're pretending that's not the case when it is. And they can play the track record game all day long and they can say, well, Yuhua has the worst track record, which she objectively does. But at the end of the day, it's about social relationships. Who do you want to see the next day? And they're gonna want their sisters there. Brigading then asks for advice from both Suki and Arizona, which the edit shows us Arizona giving her feedback saying that she thinks that Yuhua should be saved and should be allowed to go to the next round. And then they get out a big competition, because I think Arizona is thinking big picture. But strangely, they never show Suki's input. And I can't help but wonder if that's because Suki also felt the same way, that maybe Yuhua deserved another chance. I've been saying every week that I think Yuhua was the bottom two and probably should have gone home a lot sooner. But there was like a microscopic part of me that was hoping they would give her at least one more chance because everything about this last leg was completely a setup. I'll get to that in a minute. Kiana says during this deliberation that she doesn't want to be saved. She wants to lip sync. And then she asserts that it should be Yuhua in the bottom because she was the worst that week. To recycle a previous used reference, it was very Amy Yonsei Chanel saying, save Melinda and let's put on a show. Venus, in her plea to not be in the bottom, simply says she just doesn't want to do it. I remember when Eureka said she didn't want to lip sync in Canada versus the world. That created a hubbub, not only in the room, but also online. The comment from Venus was barely batted an eyelash in this group. And I don't know, for me, if you say, I just don't want to do it, for me, is grounds to say, okay, well then you are going to do it. Have fun. I hope you have a great time in this lip sync because you will be doing it now. If it were me, I would have put Venus in the bottom simply for being snotty in that moment. Last week, I said that I thought Venus was not going to win the crown because of her attitude towards Siam, and I am holding on to that assertion this week because of this moment as well. She's getting a bratty edit. And her, in her confession, saying that she was not worried about being picked, that she knew she was going to be safe. It all piles on to this edit they're giving her where she's acting a little bratty during this last bit of the competition. And so when Brigading announced that Yuhua was the first to be lip syncing, I was a bit gagged that she didn't hold on to that until the second half of her speech. I thought that maybe there was a slim chance that she would take in Arizona's feedback, that Yuhua was a positive energy in the room and deserved another shot. But also, when she said, you still have a chance to save yourself, I figured that was her saying, I hope you don't forget anything when you pack up your stuff after this lip sync. And that Brigading wasn't even considering giving Yuhua a second chance. But then Brigading goes on this monologue about how she's choosing her best friend. It was a very Shangela talking about Chi-Chi, basically saying the lipstick that I've pulled is from a bald-headed hoe who has a show with her best friend Katya and has an iconic blonde wig in drag. Signature doll makeup is named after Barbie. The queen that I've decided to send home is Chi-Chi. And Miss Venus was going through it. Her moment where she said, are you sure about that? Looking pluckzilla? It was almost such a dramatic moment of putting Venus in the bottom, and I low-key would have screamed. I kind of wanted the drama, but Brigading is not going to do that to her friend. She was never going to do that to her friend. And again, I thought that Venus was acting bratty here. And so as we talk about this last lip sync, I want to pull a Yuhua. Literally all season, she's been saying, that's not fair because I've never done that before. That's not fair, I've never seen this before. This lip sync was not fair. Lola Amor is a Filipino band that I have never heard of, that I am certain that Yuhua has never heard of. We are not a part of this culture. We are not immersed in this culture. We don't know who these people are. When a band or a group that you listen to does a live, there's gonna be slight changes in their inflection, in their tone, to meet not only the acoustics of where they're at, but also to vamp for whatever audience is listening to them. There might be a little vibrato thrown in that wasn't there before. There might be a little embellishing where there wasn't before. And so these lives hit slightly different than a recorded. And when you know a singer's ins and outs, you can kind of anticipate when they're gonna embellish something. So unless the lip sync song was a pre-recorded live that the girls had already been able to practice too, and this was not a genuine real live moment, that would be one thing. But if this song was actually performed in the room live, this was at a severe disadvantage to Yuhua. I don't know these girls like this, so maybe Venus and Kiana don't actually know this group at all, but if they do, and if they know this song, and if they know these singers, when they hear a live version, they can sort of anticipate some of the things that might be slightly different and be able to vamp and lip sync properly to those moments. Where Yuhua is just a bystander, a friend that was brought to this concert who doesn't know this group, maybe heard one or two songs and goes, oh, I love that song. Yeah, ba ba da ba ba ba, I love that part. I enjoyed the idea of Yuhua playing almost as the rocker girlfriend that's playing on the stage with the band, sort of just rocking out with them. But she didn't really know the song, and she didn't really know how to move with the group. She didn't understand their vibe, I think. And I think what really killed her was doing lines on the ground. I don't even think I can show that because of monetization, but I thought that was in really poor taste, and I have an entire soapbox that I want to get on top of so badly, because I think that consumption of certain materials has harmed our community irreparably as queer folks. It destroys communities, it destroys families, it destroys lives. It is not something to joke about, in my opinion, and is not something to make light about, and it is not something to do on the main stage of Drag Race in any franchise. It really bothers me, and I will slowly get off my soapbox to talk about Kiana. Because Kiana ate up Yuhua in the first few seconds of the song. She was powerful, she was hot, and when she laid on her back and simulated that she was polishing her pearl, I thought that was so funny. Kiana is then called as the winner and Yuhua is out, understandably. Which is kind of a bummer because I feel like next week's DragCon branding panel is exactly in Yuhua's wheelhouse. At this point, I am pretty convinced that if it comes to a lip sync for the crown, Brigading has got this down. She's got the sauce. And the others this week just don't compare to what she can do body articulation-wise, emote-wise, facial composure-wise, and the clear freedom that is exuding from her this time around. And I think that production is gonna fight tooth and nail to keep Suki out of the bottom because they don't want it to just look like the Filipinas are the only ones who have a chance to win this season. I think they're going to want to give the illusion that Suki could win, even though her track record just doesn't stack up with the others at this point. She would have to bang out these last two challenges, and even then, I don't know if they could justify giving her a win because she wasn't consistent enough all season, where someone like Brigading was, and I think Brigading has got it. And I think that Brigading is going to win this next challenge because her whole story arc in season 1 of Drag Race Philippines was that she didn't have a brand, ding ding. And because this is a branding challenge, she's got the opportunity to snatch it. I think this is going to be her and Suki's top placement. I think that Kiana is going to struggle to find her place. I think that Venus might think a little bit too big, but will probably be in the safe position. And I'm not really sure what strengths Arizona will lean in on. We'll see what happens. Also, Slaysian rules are now completely gone. It is now going to be a winner, I'm assuming, and then a bottom 2. What did you think about the episode this week? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and I will see y'all on the flip.